Okay, well, I'd like to welcome each one of you to our introductory session of the Fast 8 Weight and Health Optimization Program. I'm Dr. David DeRose. Good to see a number of you who I've interacted with in other settings, and it's great to have a number of you with us who are new to me. So wonderful to have those of you joining us by Zoom as well as on the YouTube platform. And as we get started tonight, I want to encourage you to make sure you've got the program handout. So the program handout is available on the website. I think most of you have registered. The very fact that you're here makes that highly likely. I think it was actually configured that you were able to join us for the video portion if you registered. But if you don't have a handout handy, it's great to have access to that because we are going to use that as kind of a resource manual. I've got some interview components that we'll be sharing tonight, and then we'll also be taking your questions. That's an overview of where we're headed. So as we begin this evening, I want to actually take you to something that is actually drawn from the program handout. So if you've got that in front of you, you may find some of the similar language actually in the handout is what I'll be projecting here for you on the screen. And what I'd like you to notice is the website is being displayed there. So the website that directly takes you to the Fast 8 program content is www.timelesshealinginsights.org/fast8. So if you want to go directly to the area where we have all the Fast 8 resources, the links for the videos, we'll have the archived videos as we present them from week to week. So that is the place where you want to go. Then what I want to mention is this program is something that, as I've been talking with people, I've sensed that there may be some folks that, well, have some ambivalence about a weight loss program, even if it's something that they feel, well, is something that would really be valuable to them. So a little bit of background as we get started tonight. Most people in my years as a physician who've come to me for weight loss programming or to see me as a physician for weight loss, they're coming because they've got a history of what they perceive to be failures when it comes to achieving whatever they think an ideal weight is. And whenever we do any kind of programming, whenever we offer help for this diagnosis or this condition, however you want to describe it, we're likely attracting people who feel like, well, I don't know that I want to do this again. Because typically what happens in a weight loss program, you're given a list of things to do. And if you're given a list of things to do, there's always the potential that you're not going to do them or you won't continue to do them. And as a result, it's going to perpetuate a cycle of doing, maybe achieving, and then failing. So if you can relate to that dynamic, I want to speak to that as we begin this evening, because we're really taking a very different approach to how we're doing this program. It is designed so that every single one of you who is tuning in, whether you're watching this live or whether you're tuning in after we presented it in a live format, we want to make it so that everybody can go through an 8-week program and be successful with completing the program. So I want to give you that assurance, first of all. We're really committed to helping you go through the entire program. You say, well, you already started by talking with us about maybe we have some ambivalence, and now you're talking about finishing an 8-week program. Where are you going with this, Dr. DeRose? Well, one of the things that we're drawing from in this series, which is new for me, I haven't used this particular model before, and it's called the acceptance and commitment therapy model, and it's being used in weight loss. There's a lot of different helps that have been developed using this model. It's a newer model, and I'm going to introduce you to someone who's an expert in the field. I recently had the opportunity to interview him. He's not live, but we've got some clips from Dr. Jason Lillis. I'm going to share with you the first clip because it'll introduce you to Dr. Lillis. It'll introduce you to a little bit of programming philosophy, kind of let you know where he's coming from and where we're coming from. So I wanted to lead with that clip. So at this point, I'm going to go to about a 4-minute clip with Dr. Dr. Lillis. And let me see if we can navigate to that for you. And he is supposedly waiting in the wings through the beauty of modern technology. So let me make sure that I've enabled all of this correctly for you. And we're trying this one more time. It is all enabled correctly. So let's take a listen to Dr. Lillis. He'll first be introducing himself, and then we'll go from there.
One of the people that I've been indebted to as I've been, again, looking at some of the literature on helping people change their history is a doctor by the name of Jason Lillis. And the really good news is Jason is actually in the studio today with me, our virtual studio. Dr. Lillis, it's great to have you with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Jason, I learned about your work actually through the lay press. You came out with a book a while back called The Diet Trap. And as you and I were talking off air, I love the subtitle, Feed Your Psychological Needs and End the Weight Loss Struggle Using Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. I know that's a mouthful. We want to talk about that on today's show. And just by way of background, Jason, you've got a number of academic affiliations. You're a researcher. You've been writing books in the lay press. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. I got my PhD in clinical psychology from the University of Nevada, Reno, and I worked with Dr. Stephen Hayes there. He's actually one of the originators of the treatment approach I use, which is called acceptance and commitment therapy, said as one word, ACT for short. So that's kind of where I come by my treatment approach. And then my interest in health behavior change generally and weight specifically is a personal interest. Got some good advice from that mentor of mine back in the day that if you're going to do research, you really should pick something you personally care about, because it's a hard road to do research and get studies off the ground and finish them, a lot of work. So I have a personal interest in health change and weight. Almost everyone in my family is obese in terms of my immediate family, and or with obesity is the proper way of saying that today. And I myself have gone up and down the weight scale and wondered why I've been on that roller coaster, most of my life. And so I come by the work honestly. So I've applied ACT in this area for, as far as I can remember now, I think we're up to about 13-ish, 14 years or so. And that took me to I remain part-time in that position.
So I think we lost our speaker. Is that correct? You want to give me a thumbs up if that's what happened? Okay, let me see if we can get Dr. Lillis back with us. So I think we've got him where he left off. Let's see if we can make sure we continue.
And life took me back to the West Coast, so I remain part-time in that position, and now I also work at a university, Cal North State University, but I continue to do health behavior change research.
As I listened to your book, these opening stories talking about people who feel defeated, they feel like they're continual failures. Speak to us a little bit about that. Someone who's listening right now, Jason, they want to turn the station off. They're saying, hey, listen, I don't need to hear any more about weight loss. I just fail at this every time people talk with me. I see how bad I am. What is this? Why is there this acceptance in the terminology of this treatment approach?
Right. So, one of the things about body shape and size is, it's, it's not concealable, right? So if you're out in public, people can see you and your body and your shape. The stigma against people with a larger body shape is extremely widespread. It develops in young children. So I don't know how we transmit this, but we get this into the heads of 4 and 5-year-olds to the point where they prefer almost anyone as a friend to someone who has a larger body shape. So imagine how that seeps down that young, that early. It just means it's sort of systematically widespread. And it is still to a degree socially accepted to stigmatize a larger body shape. Now that is very slowly changing, but I emphasize very slowly. The other part of this that I think is really important to point out is the dominant sort of media promotion of why our waistlines have expanded, and generally speaking, as a world, we weigh more, has been to highlight personal failings, things like willpower. There's not really a lot of evidence that really plays even an infinitesimal role in what's going on. There's a lot of potential explanations. That's probably the least likely. So it's sort of built in. So from very young, there's a stigma towards a larger body shape, and you get messages that if you have way more, then you likely that's due to personal characteristics and failings of yourself. So it's almost impossible not to internalize that and feel shame and blame around that, whether you're trying to lose weight or you did, and now it's gained it back.
Okay, well, how many of you could relate to Dr. Lillis and what he was sharing? And this is really part of what's exciting to me, this acceptance and commitment therapy. We're not using that exclusively as the model. So for those of you who don't know me, I've been a clinician for over 30 years. And early on in my career, I was the medical director for a hospital-based weight loss program. So I've been working with people who've been trying to have success in this area for many, many years. So we'll be drawing from a variety of models. And although I really like a lot of what Dr. Lillis is talking about, I don't 100% subscribe to everything that he and other people in this area are doing. So if you know anything about ACT and you say, oh, I don't like this aspect of it, well, hopefully that's one of the aspects we won't be using. But one of the things that to me is really very positive and healing, it's recognizing the trauma that people have had who've struggled with this. And some of you heard a recent presentation that my wife and I did on a live television program a few days ago, and just talking about many of the genetic and environmental factors that predispose us to have a different body shape. And some of us are predisposed to be larger than others, and it's not because you made some decision to do that. And what's so interesting about this ACT, this acceptance and commitment therapy, is they're really recognizing this, and they find that because we grow up in a society where there is this shaming and blaming, what has happened is then people have internalized that. And you come to any kind of a program like this feeling like you're a failure and feeling like, oh, is this just going to be another 8 weeks? It's going to set me up to feel like, oh, here's another checklist of things that I did and didn't work, and I'm even worse because I did this as well. And that's exactly the opposite of the approach that we're taking. We're going to try to give you some skills, some things, build on skills you already have, believe it or not, and also try to reframe the whole issue of body size and body shape. And I'll introduce you to some of those concepts tonight. So I want to go back to a few things that are drawn from your handout. And again, I just really want to emphasize the handout is really the key resource that I want you all interacting with. You don't have to interact with it necessarily this evening, but I definitely want you using this as a resource as we go through the program together. And the philosophy of this program, like I mentioned, is to give you a track record of success. And so as a result, we're basing this program on 8 different fasts. If you haven't picked up on why it's called Fast 8, it's an 8-week program where we're introducing you to 8 different fasting strategies. And I've worked with intensive fasting strategies. I've had people come into centers where we actually monitored them doing blood work, putting them on water-only fasts. We're not doing any of those intensive fasts on this program. In fact, we're looking at some fasting strategies, and you're going to be choosing your own goals. And the idea is, as we introduce these different fasting concepts, I want you to decide, each of you as individuals, what you can do over the course of 8 weeks that would incorporate this strategy. And we're giving you permission to set the hurdle, as we call them, as low as you want. We want to make sure that you can clear every hurdle over the course of 8 weeks. And you may say, well, wait a minute, you're going to let me just set some kind of goal that's really small, and that's all I have to do for 8 weeks? That's really what we're talking about. It may sound like a crazy approach, but I've been doing this with patients for many years. It can be very effective, and we're packaging it in a different way. We've not run this Fast 8 program before. So some of you know this is, in addition to being a program, it's also a beta test. You're actually helping us to say, is this messaging working? Is this connecting? As we go from week to week, you're our reality check. Is this making sense to you? Are you understanding how the program works? Are we rolling it out correctly to work for you? So just a couple of other things as far as key concepts, and then I'm going to introduce you to someone who's allowed us to interview her for tonight's program. So one of the key concepts, if you haven't heard me say this yet, it's that I want you at the end of 8 weeks, even though I'm going to introduce you to 8 different strategies, I want you to pick at least one of those strategies that you're going to be exposed to, or a few of them, that's permissible, that you're going to plan to continue for the rest of your life. It does not matter how small the change is. It's something that you feel that you can do. So you say, no, wait a minute. If you're going to let me make a really small change and do that for 8 weeks, it may do nothing. The scale may not change. Part of this program and part of the ACT model, it's really de-emphasizing the scale. And you might say, well, wait a minute. Why are you calling it a weight optimization program if we're not going to be weighing in? We'll talk more about that this evening, but the focus is on you making positive, healthy changes, some things that have been maybe you've used sporadically, but what kind of things can you make a commitment to that you will stick with? So rather than just giving you theory, I want to introduce you to someone who actually I had the privilege of meeting some time ago, actually in a social context, in a faith community. We're actually members of the same faith community. Her name is Melora Priest. And Melora, I'm going to ask you to unmute right now, if you would. And so Melora, it's good to have you with us on the program tonight.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So Melora, you heard what Dr. Lillis was sharing. Could you relate to any of those things that he mentioned this evening?
No, absolutely. It's 100% okay to pick on a kid that's fat, and I was told by a teacher that, I was told by a teacher that I had a choice. I didn't have to be fat, and so there wasn't anything that she was going to do. It was okay to hurt my feelings. And that was from a teacher.
Now, Melora, I've got a photograph that you sent us, and I'm going to try to put that up for us here. We'll see if I can navigate this successfully. And we have got it, I think, ready to show. So let me see if we can pull that up, because you are really a success story.
Yeah. Thanks, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. So can everyone see that? Is that projecting for you? I know it's not the full screen. Are some of you seeing that? Are you seeing it, Melora?
Yeah, I see the picture of all 3 of us.
Okay. And do you see the picture of you before on the left?
I got something else is in my way. Just a second. Let me check. Oh, yes, it's there.
Okay. So these are some things that you shared with me and in an interview prior to being willing to join us live, that you weighed in at 285 at 5'3",
Yes.
and that was back in March 2nd. Do I have that date down of 2020?
Well, that's when that picture was taken.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's that when that picture was taken. That was me.
and so that's you also on the right. And is that demonstrating my superior Photoshop skills, or is that an unretouched photo?
That is an unretouched photo. That's me October this year or last year, 2022.
And so you've dropped some 90 pounds, is that right?
That's right.
So we're talking about this concept of adopting a single behavior strategy and applying it. And this is something that is part of your story, right?
Yes, it is.
So tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I was talking to you on the phone, and I was having a really bad day, and I was telling you that I wanted to be vegan again and get in better shape, because I couldn't walk across my living room without having to stop for breath. I couldn't stand. And you said, Melora, don't be vegan, which, you got my attention right away. You said, just make one change that you're willing to live with for the rest of your life. So I did.
Okay, now this you're going back several years now, right? This is a conversation we had maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
2.5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Not 3, but 2.5. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks for making sure I have the chronology correct.
Well, it
So-
matters to me.
It does. It does. It does. So that's why I'm thanking you. So Melora, what did you do based on that?
I switched milk. I gave up skim milk and went to almond milk or any plant-based milk.
Okay, now someone just
Like-
hearing that will say, this is not going to be a successful weight loss strategy. I mean, if you look at the calories on a bottle of skim milk, or a carton and a carton of soy milk or almond milk, yeah, maybe a little bit different, but how is that going to make much difference? You actually found that started to translate into success for you?
Absolutely. It was a step I could take. And when I automatically reached for the almond milk instead of regular milk, I felt like I was ready to make another change. But that was at least a month later. And that's when I started adding more vegetables. I think that's what I did next, and made myself eat more vegetables at every meal. That was the next change I made. And then after that, I took meat off of my table 2 days a week, and just made vegetables and just vegetarian stuff. And then, well, anyway, but I didn't make 2 changes at once. I made one change, and when that no longer felt like a sacrifice or a problem, when they became normal, then I made another. And
Okay.
sometimes
Well-
it took weeks, sometimes it didn't. Sorry.
Well, I just want to thank you, Melora, for coming on. And I know we've actually recorded some interview footage from Melora telling more about her story, and we'll try to make that available to you at some point. Maybe even share some other segments, or maybe have you on if people have questions. But I appreciate you sharing that, because really what you're illustrating is a concept that we've used with a lot of people over the years, and it's a very successful concept. And I know it sounds underwhelming to many of you, and especially when we're talking about an 8-week program. The one thing we're doing differently than the concept as Melora expressed it strictly is we are going to have you working with 8 different fasts during the course of the 8 weeks. So it won't be just doing one thing. We want you to experiment with 8 different approaches. But as you're doing that over this 8-week program, we want you thinking about which one or more of these that I can stick with for the rest of my life. That's really what we're talking about. And some of you might say, well, hey, I'm out of this. I wanted to do something for 8 weeks, and be able to wear that thing for the event. But I'm not in this for the long haul. We're really in it to try to help people for the long haul. Because so if you're someone who's dealt with these challenges for a long time, this is what we want to do. We want to give you, my goal is not to see how much weight we can lose as a group in a short time, because that's often not sustainable. All of you probably, if you've dealt with this problem, this challenge, you could tell me stories about how much you lost in a short time and then how you regained it. So that's really not what we're looking. We're not looking for repeating a cycle of failure. So I want to come back to Dr. Lillis at this point, and then I'm going to tell you specifics about the program, try to make sure we all understand what we're challenging you to do over the next week, and then we want to hear from you. So we're going to try to do this all every week in a 1 hour time frame, so from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. So I did want to share one other clip from Dr. Lillis with you. So we're going to go back to him right now.
Jason, we were speaking in the previous segment that our society is not a good one as far as accepting people who have a little bit larger body type. This stigma starting at very early ages. The other thing that seems to go along with this often is some kind of concept that many people have that somehow if they shame people or somehow just tell them, get your life in order, stop eating so much, exercise more. If they just give them, these kind of value-laden statements, it's somehow going to help them. Can you help us from the psychological research perspective? I mean, is this really a good strategy?
Yeah, well, I'll give you a clinical example, and then I'll talk about the research really quick. We have to weigh people for our research studies, and I feel very conflicted about that for a variety of reasons, because people have so much psychologically tied into the number on the scale, which I think is a real problem in this area that hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about at some point in this conversation. But I've seen folks have near panic attacks stepping on the scale, and it just tells you that is the result of a lifetime of feeling bad about the number on the scale and what they see in the mirror and what they've heard from other sources related to the number on the scale and what they see in the mirror. So I promise you they've received that message. They do not need it from another person. That's one thing. Now, the other part of that is when this has been researched in well-controlled research studies, and they've been done in a variety of ways, but just to give you an example, having people watch a video of someone being stigmatized for their body shape, for example. Individuals will respond to that some individuals will respond to that by eating more. So it, in fact, has the exact opposite effect, which makes sense because you're inducing a distressing experience, and and this is again I'm not pointing the finger at personal responsibility here. I do not think this is an issue of willpower, personal responsibility. However, when you're distressed, food is a soother. Food can be a soother, right? So if you combine a toxic food environment that we have with a whole lot of stigma towards body shape, it's not surprising that those things can become associated with each other. So it is very counterproductive to, point out someone's weight or talk about it or tell them to kind of lose some pounds. It's more likely to have the opposite effect than the intended effect.
Okay, so I think some of you can relate to what Dr. Lillis is sharing. The unfortunate thing is many people have internalized these messages, and basically what happens is you tend not to see yourself as a value. You see yourself as weak. You see yourself as failing in this area of your life, and we're trying to help you rewrite that narrative. and to give you a track record of success in these 8 weeks. So let me tell you a little bit about what to expect. I'm not going to be relating to pages in the handout. I've actually got a physical copy of the current version of the handout in front of me. The reason why I'm going to refrain from saying like on page 5 or on page 12 is the handout is something that we're continuing to upgrade. So I think all of you have registered for the program. You can plan that every week we're going to have some update on the handout. So someone has said, you know, this wasn't clear, or I didn't like the grammar that you had on page 5 or whatever. So let us know what version you've got. It's at the top of the page of the handout. Let me know the version you're working from. And if you have a handout or a comment, you can send that to us through the program website. So when you contact us through that HubSpot facilitated website. So let me tell you what we're looking at. If you go the current version of the handout, I will tell you it's table 1 and it is on page 5, even though I just told you I wouldn't do that, but it may be different in a future version. This gives you an idea of where we're headed, the 8 different fasts and how we're rolling those out over the 8-week program. So your challenge, some of you asked me this question too electronically, because you saw 2 different dates for the start of this program. Is tomorrow, February the 5th, Sunday, is that the start, or is it tonight, Saturday, February 4th? Well, this is supposedly the pre-launch introductory video because day 1 of the program happens to be tomorrow. So I know that messaging was kind of confusing. People were scratching their head. Well, how can the program be starting tomorrow and the first video is tonight? That's why. So we're actually labeling the days of the program starting tomorrow. So we haven't actually started the program. So we're giving you an idea of what to do on day 1 of the program tonight. And what we're challenging you to do, you can see it there in the overview table, which is table 1, or you can see as we describe it in detail in the pages that follow. There's specific several options that you get to choose between. So there's a section A and a section B, and I want to talk with you briefly about each of those. So section A, you're supposed to start that tomorrow, and I'm asking each of you to choose one of 3 options. The first one is an option that Melora mentioned that she adopted pretty early on, something similar to what she described. And that is, you're going to start just 1 meal each day with a serving of what we call leaf, stem, or flower vegetables. And if you're not familiar with a leaf, stem, or flower vegetable is, I think most of you, it may be readily apparent, but table 2 in your handout has a list. So under leaf vegetables, we have things like cabbage and collard greens, kale and lettuce. Under stem vegetables, we have listed asparagus and celery. Under flower vegetables, we have artichoke. If you didn't know, that's the flower buds that you're eating. Broccoli is actually the flower, the florets, the undeveloped flower buds, and the stems. Cauliflower. So these are the type of vegetables that we're asking you to start your meal with. 1 meal a day, and we give you a day off. So you're going to say, next week, I'm willing to make this commitment. I'm going to have 1 serving of nothing but leaf, stem, and flower vegetables before I eat anything else at that 1 meal a day. And the question becomes then, well, what's a serving? For some of you, just hearing the word vegetable, you're starting to be traumatized. And I understand that, okay, because I've worked with a lot of people. So if vegetables are really just not your thing, I still am challenging you to do this. And it may just be a bite of celery or a spoonful of spinach. That's your serving, okay? There's some other options, though, if you say, I can't even handle that. So you see the second option, if you're following along, is you can actually choose to have a jello equivalent. We call it an herbal jello. You actually have a recipe for that in your handout. I'll share some other recipes with you. Someone said they looked at this one. They said this didn't look like a very good one. I'll get you another one that we used in one of the clinics I worked with. but we'll get you that as well. That one used some artificial coloring and sweetening, and some people don't like that. So, but I will try to get you that one. We'll put it in the updated version of the handout. And my good wife is online taking notes for me, making sure all the things that I promised you tonight that I'll actually follow through with. And so it won't be because Sonia didn't remind me. It'll be because I didn't follow through with it. So we'll give you another recipe if you don't like the particular one in there. So that's another option. So this is a non-caloric Jello. The reason we developed it years ago, used these two ingredients, guar gum and psyllium seed. I know some of you probably got your mouth watering just hearing about this. I know I'm saying that facetiously, but the interesting thing about it is this particular Jello also helps to stabilize blood sugar. So if you have diabetes, we started using it with patients who were dealing with diabetes, and they would eat this Jello before their meal. It would help to stabilize their blood sugar. The leaf, stem, and flower vegetables have a similar effect. They're very good for blood sugar. They tend to keep blood sugar stable, and so it has that added benefit for you. The third option that we give you is, and we say it's a special option, and that is you can do something very interesting, and that is you can actually choose to go on our 30-day program. The 30-day program, some of you have been on it already. We call it 30 Days to Better Health. It's also on the Timeless Healing Insights website. And this is a little bit more directive. It's a little bit different approach. So it's not completely in harmony with what I've been sharing with you tonight, but it is fairly equivalent. You'll end up at a similar place in about 4 weeks. So if you're someone who feels like, well, this handout isn't directive enough, I want someone telling me more specific challenges to work on each day. If you've never done that program, you can use that program in place of the goals that we're rolling out over the first 4 weeks. So it's an alternative for 30 days. So the last set of things, section B, is helping you to work with a concept that is one that's been very powerful in my work with people who are trying to trim down, and it's learning to differentiate between hunger and appetite. So I have some material in the handout that describes this. We have some exercises, things that you can do. We have a table. It was figure 5.11 in a book that I co-authored called 30 Days to Natural Blood Pressure Control. Certain things that you can do that can slow your meal, the tempo of your meals down, can help you be in touch with this concept of when your hunger is satisfied. So you can read some of the material there and find that hopefully helpful for you. So we're asking you to do two things this week that's beginning, and then we'll take your questions here in a few minutes. I'm asking you to do two things. So the two things are, one is to apply strategies that relate to section A or section B. I know I didn't fully describe section A for you, and I'll let you ask me about that if it's confusing. But one has to do with eating more vegetables. The other is using this this Jello equivalent. And then the second thing is to try to be mindful of the difference between hunger and appetite. So I know this may sound pretty strange to you, but all of us intrinsically know when our hunger is satisfied, but we've educated ourselves. If you're like most of us, myself included, as I grew up, I educated myself to eat when I was not hungry. Hunger is a true physiologic need for food that your body is appreciating. Appetite is a desire for food that may or not be in keeping with your physiologic needs. I just want you thinking about that concept. And when you eat, to be thinking, am I going to eat to satisfy my hunger, or am I eating for appetite? So it's really just kind of a questioning process. There's some things there that as you slow your eating down, as you're mindful of this dynamic between hunger and appetite, it can help you as far as the quantity of food that you eat at meals. And in this current version of the handout, if you see the two fasts we're working with, you'll say, well, this sounds interesting. It says fast at the end of the meal. Someone has said we need to revise that and say to fast from overeating. So this idea of hunger and appetite is to help you have a different way of knowing how to control your consumption at a given meal. So on that note, I want to open things up for your questions. And basically, if you're on the YouTube platform, Beth Stevens is one of the people assisting us with the program. So Beth, are you able to look at the YouTube chat function? Are you able to log in there for us as well? Or is that going to be stretching you? Okay, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
The host unmuted me. Thank you.
Okay.
I have questions here on our Zoom live stream chat. Would you like one of those from us?
Yeah, well, so we'll start with those. And then Ronnie, another one of our assistants, might be able to help. Ronnie, maybe put some of those in the Zoom chat, so Beth isn't having to monitor a couple of computers. Sonia, you may also want to jump on the YouTube and do that if you're able to on another device. Okay, so Beth, what have you got as far as questions?
So is it okay if your servings are mixed with fruit and nuts, meaning the greens?
Okay, so here's the deal. You get to choose what you're going to do. So the original intention is that you would identify something as a serving of only leaf, stem, and flower vegetables, because they're especially powerful in this area. But I am concerned with you doing something that's attainable for you. Remember, the goal of the program is for you to set the hurdles as low as needed so that you can clear them. And what we're doing here, and I'm glad the question has come up, is everything that we start in week 1, we actually do want you to continue for the 8 weeks. So we're going to be adding things each week. So I want you to think of something you can realistically do for 8 weeks. And here's the other part of it. If you try something for a week and say it was just too much, Sonia, please help me take particular note of this, because we want to include this too in the revisions of the handout. I want to make sure this is clear. If you do something for a week and you feel like it's too much to continue that as well as adding something else, you can drop that off. We want you to stay engaged with the program and experiment with these different strategies. Sure, the bigger the hurdle, the more likely you are to see, weight changes at the end of 8 weeks. But remember, the goal is just that you're going to be making positive changes that you can stick with. So that's really the key. Beth, what else do we have coming through for us?
So we had a couple of questions about the handout. Some folks did not download it. So we've put that in the chat. You can download the handouts by signing up at timelesshealinginsights.org. And there's a link right there in the chat for everyone. And then we have a question that says, when it says start 1 meal each day, does that mean I'm only eating 1 meal a day?
Okay, great question. So no, you're on your, basically, we're not talking at this point about meal timing at all. Whatever schedule works for you, whatever you've been doing, you continue doing that. We're just asking you to choose 1 meal of the day. And on that meal, we're asking you to start either with the Jello alternative, the herbal Jello, and if you don't like the herbal Jello, if you just want to stir a spoonful of psyllium seed husk and water and drink it. If you're already taking Metamucil, that's what Metamucil is. It's just Metamucil has some artificial flavorings and colorings, but it's soluble fiber. And you say, hey, well, I don't want to eat Jello. Let me just stir this into 8 ounces of water and just drink that. I mean, that will count too. So it's doing something at the beginning of your meal that is one of these compounds, whether it's the leaf, stem, and flower vegetables or the soluble fibers that have blood sugar stabilizing and weight loss benefiting properties. And but remember, we're wanting you to do this for the duration of the program. Now, one thing I didn't mention as we're talking about this is important, because if you're looking at the handout, there is one other option that you have. And you'll notice there that I said you could actually get really serious about the leaf, stem, and flower vegetables, but you don't want to do it at the beginning of one meal a day for 6 days of every week for the next 8 weeks, you say, what I could do is something different. I could actually do this for one day, okay? Or maybe for one meal. So if you want to, if you want to find some other way that you're going to eat more leaf, stem, and flower vegetables, we're saying that's good as well. If you say, you know what, I just want to have one meal a week where it's just going to be leaf, stem, and flower vegetables. I want to do that instead of doing something, every day or 6 days of the week, even though it's just one serving at the beginning of the meal. So what I'm trying to help you do, and I know, because I've worked with people with a lot of programs, and it's interesting. Some people are very happy when I'm giving them options. Some of you right now are getting a bit distressed and you're getting frustrated. Like, why can't this guy just tell me what to do? And that's why we have that 30-day program option. If you're one of those people, you're starting to say, this is getting stressful already. He's telling me all these different options that I can do. I don't know what to do. I want someone to tell me what to do. That's why we have that 30-day option. That just tells you exactly what to do, specific things each day that you work on for 30 days. But what we're doing with those of you who like something a little more flexible, we're giving you options of things that you can choose. So that's why we've got the two options. If you're wondering, like, well, why is this 30-day option? How does that fit in? Beth, what else do we have coming through as far as questions?
So we're going to address two questions. Are you able to cook and season the vegetables, the ones that you're suggesting that they start with? And then are there any recipes available online for any of these suggestions?
So right now, someone else was asking me about this before we launched tonight, about recipes. So we do not have a formal recipe book or something that we're using with this program. But one of the things we're encouraging with this program, we'll talk more about it next week, is connecting with other people. So one of the great ways that you can connect with the group is send in some recipes. If you say, oh, I've got some recipes that are great for this, we will allow you to be part of the support community. And if you're good with us including it in the handout or other things that may spin off of this, let us know. If it's something copyrighted, let us know that this is published in some place. And we're happy to give you credit or whatever if it's your own recipe, if you're willing to allow us to share that with other folks. So coming back though to the question about seasoning, and in fact someone asked us when we were talking about the program earlier in another venue, they said, well, can we add butter and cream or put, well, that wasn't the original intention, just like adding the fruit and nuts and dried fruit, but we're letting you adapt it for what's going to work with you. If you're eating more vegetables, that is the goal. If you're eating, more soluble fiber, that is the goal. These are the two things that we're looking at you physically increasing in your diet week one. And we're hoping you'll find something that you can continue throughout the 8 weeks. If you try it for a week and you say, this is just too much for me, we're going to let you drop that off. And we're going to introduce you to something else in week 2, some other things. So that at the end of 8 weeks, you're perhaps doing 8 different strategies. You've continued them for the 8 weeks. Maybe you've dropped a few off that didn't work for you. But at the end of those 8 weeks, you're going to say, hey, here's a few things that I can definitely continue long term, and they're working for me. Beth, do we have some other things coming through?
We do. So on your 3ABN interview, you said the water requirement is half your weight to prevent dehydration. How does one drink a gallon a day without washing out nutrients?
Okay. So so let's talk about this. So basically, we gave a rule of thumb. We did an interview on a network called Three Angels Broadcasting Network a couple of days ago. So it was Thursday night. So if you're familiar with that network, it's 3abn.org. I think they're re-airing the program. My wife and I, who's also a physician, we talked about this program in some detail during a live program. And the question came up about water requirements. And the rule of thumb that many of us have used for water drinking is you take your weight in pounds. So if a person is 200 and, let's make sure I'm doing the math right here, 256 pounds, they take their weight in half. That would be 128. So if I'm doing this right, 128 ounces are in a gallon. Okay. And this person is saying, well, how am I going to drink a gallon in a day? What my wife mentioned is we often use ideal weight. So, and this is a great time to talk about ideal weight for this program. What really is ideal weight on this program? Ideal weight is what you weigh when you are on an ideal program. So I may just want you to think about that for a minute. So that may mean that you looked at a body composition chart. I'll come back to the water, don't worry. But you look at a body composition chart or a weight chart and you say, well, I'm, 5'4", I'm a woman, I'm supposed to weigh no more than 130. By the way, that's unrealistic for many people, but let's just say you saw it on a chart, 130. That's my goal weight. You may never be able to be at 130. You weighed 130 when you were 7 years old. Okay, you're not going to be 130 as a full-grown adult woman just because you're 5'4" and a chart said that, because you got primed in utero or maybe genetic things. So when you get on what's an ideal program for you, your body will equilibrate ultimately at what's an optimal weight for you, an ideal weight. Now, the response that many people give me, well, I can't be on an ideal program because I'm living in the real world. So what is that telling me? Well, then your best weight is what you weigh when you're on the best program that you can follow in light of your other lifestyle challenges. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help you get on the best program that you can be on, give you a number of options, things that can help you. And then as you stick with that, your weight is going to equilibrate at what a best weight is for you. And the chart may say 130, it may be 200 for you, but it's better than the 350 that you've been weighing for the last, 10 years. But don't get down to 200 and throw in the towel because, oh, I can never get down to 130. Why even try? I mean, you've lost what? You've lost, 150 pounds. I mean, this is tremendous. So anyway, we're going to talk more about how these things roll out. So coming back to the water drinking, there's no requirement right now for water drinking at all at this part in the program, okay? We'll get there later. So don't make unrealistic expectations, but the water drinking requirement, it's half your ideal weight in ounces. That's a rule of thumb. If that seems like an awful lot, when we get to the beverage choices and things, we'll help you transition to a more optimal fluid intake. Okay?
Okay,
Beth,
so we've got another one.
Mhm.
So instead of psyllium, any thoughts on chia seeds simply mixed with 100% fruit juice and then allowed to naturally gel in the refrigerator?
We'll let you try it. Yeah, I have my concerns with, I'd rather you use something else or used a limited amount of fruit juice with water. We're going to find that one of the enemies for many of us when it comes to optimizing our weight is in the form of juice, even if we solidify it in a jello. So juice is a very concentrated source of calories, but I'll let you try it out. I haven't used that. If you want to try it out for a week, and if that's the only change you make, let us know what happened. You tell us, you gained 10 pounds. We'll know not to, let people, warn them. But so what I'm saying is I'm good with the chia seeds, but I'm worried about sweetening them with pure fruit juice. So you put a little fruit juice in with some herb tea or something, or water, just or put some, lemon juice in with it. I'd be much more comfortable with that.
Okay, so next up for you, what do you think about drinking celery juice or vegetable juice instead of eating the actual vegetables?
Totally works. So yeah, so coming back to that earlier question, any way you consume the leaf, stem, and flower vegetables counts. If you want to, juice it and drink it as a juice, if you want to eat it raw, if you want to steam it, of course, the less caloric things you add to it, the better, okay? But at this point, we're letting you write the script. So I wouldn't recommend it, but there's probably some of you that want to put bacon and cheese on the vegetables. Well, don't worry, we'll get there, at some point in the program. I wouldn't recommend that, but if you say it's the only way you can get it, I'm not going to say you can't. Now, some of you are shocked that I'm saying that. We're trying to work with people where they're at. And so that's what this whole program is about. So if I shock you like I shot Melora when I told her that I didn't want her to go on a vegan diet, then I may shock you throughout this program, but we're trying to help you to be successful and not just give you a list of things that are unrealistic, okay?
Okay, so we have one from our YouTube audience. They are saying they have a little bit of difficulty with the actual vegetables. Is there any other item that would work?
Well, that's why we wanted to put in the option with the soluble fibers.
Mhm.
So, whether it's, taking Metamucil, whether it's something with, and we'll allow you to use chia seed or guar gum. These are things that can be used as to make a kind of a natural jello. We traditionally used an herb tea base. I will tell you, since I mentioned one of the centers I worked in where they were working with diverse group of people, they actually used like an unsweetened Kool-Aid or something like that. I mean, artificially sweetened Kool-Aid. So it had a lot of flavor and a lot of sweetness, but no calories. So they used that as the base and thickened it with some of these herbal thickeners. So you could use something like that. And that's the recipe that I'll try to track down for you and put in the next version of the handout. I do need to move into kind of a transition to close. If we've got other questions, Beth, maybe you could take a note of those, and we might throw some of those into the handout. We might include some of them in the presentation next time. We're definitely planning to take questions every night, but the other things I wanted to mention for you, a couple of other things. Some of you, this is sounding so difficult, you feel like you need some other help because this is a spiritual journey for many people. I've worked with overtly spiritual programs. I come from a Christian framework. This 8-week program, though, is designed to appeal to people from any faith tradition, atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, Islam, whatever. We're not pushing any particular spiritual orientation. But having said that, we know for maximum effectiveness, the spiritual element often needs to be tapped into. So a couple of resources we have. If you do come from a Christian perspective, if you go on the Timeless Healing Insights website, I won't actually do that for you, but we have a daily devotional, so some spiritual inspirational messages. I'm actually reading through a Christian classic devotional called The Upward Look. You can actually sign up for that. You'll get a link. It's just like 3 or 4 minutes, something that you can listen to every day, some uplifting thoughts. That's one resource we have for you. We're also talking about rolling out a spiritual support group in addition, like a midweek event, maybe in 10 days or so. So we'll talk more about that in our next meeting. So if you're feeling just overwhelmed with all this, and this will give you more opportunity for interaction and more of a small group setting. So just wanted to kind of let you know of some of the options that we're planning. So we've promised to try to wind things up in 1 hour so you know what to plan for. I do want to just show you one other thing on the screen here as we're finishing up. And that is right here for you. So okay. So again, I wanted to emphasize something, that you can be successful, you can win on this program just by sticking with it. And that's the commitment that we're making. And again, we've tried to make the barriers low. We've tried to give you flexibility in choosing what those barriers are, but we're going to be giving you different practical skills. Some of these things, are drawn from, certain mental health frameworks, but we're really de-emphasizing the scale. So having said that, I do think for some of you, it may be important to check your weight tomorrow and record it somewhere, because you may want to keep track of that. I don't recommend you weighing more than once a week, but if some of you do want to keep track of your weight, that's okay. But really, we are going to be de-emphasizing that. But we're going to give you an opportunity probably next week to anonymously, if you want to, share with us some of those details, if that would be helpful to you, or just keep it to yourself. But at the end of the program, we may allow you to self-report anonymously through a survey instrument. If you want to tell us, what's happened, or give us some, reactions to what's happening, we'll be giving you opportunities to share as we go through the program. So I think that's a good note to conclude on. I appreciate each one of you investing in your health. Some of you came because you wanted to gain weight. I promised you that we're going to help people with some strategies to gain weight. The key message for you is don't start with the leaf, stem, and flower meal at the beginning of your meal. Start with things that are more calorically dense. So if you're trying to gain weight, don't load up on those soluble fibers and the leaf, stem, and flower vegetables, okay? So we're going to give you more help on all those fronts. Beth, as we wind up, any final points?
Dr. DeRose, when is our next meeting and where will this be seen again for those people who couldn't attend this evening?
Okay, so if folks want to jump on, the program website is timelesshealinginsights.org/fast8. We'll try to make that as easy as possible so you can watch previous videos like this one that'll be recorded. And then our next program is scheduled for 7 p.m. next week. So 7 p.m. Eastern time from 7 to 8. We're going to try to do that live. I have some out-of-town commitments that may cause us to have that a pre-recorded program, but we're trying to do everything we can to have it live as well. So every night we will release something at 7 p.m. In some circumstances, it may have to be pre-recorded.
Very good.
Okay, thank you for each one for joining us tonight. Looking forward to a successful journey with each one of you.